Hello YouTube, my name is Josh and I want to welcome you to our channel. So today we're here to talk about game streaming and cloud gaming, and instead of talking about a specific company, we're going to talk about some of the accessories that you can use to take your game streaming to the next level. So these are things that will pair well with your PC or your Mac, your Chromebook, your Android device, or your iOS device. So we'll review our top 5, our favorites that we use all the time as we make our videos. And you'll find links in the description below if you want to try those out for yourself. So let's jump into number 1. First up, we have the C.T.R.L.I controller by Mad Catz. Now this is an iOS controller, so it's made for iPhones, and it's really designed to take up to a plus size iPhone, and it works really well for that purpose. We like this controller a lot. So if you take a look at it, this controller essentially has an Xbox 360 layout. So it's got the same sticks, same buttons. One thing that you will note, and this is not something that's unique to the Mad Catz controller, this is true for all iOS controllers, the thumbsticks are not clickable, so if I push on them, nothing happens, and it is missing the select button. So this is just part of Apple's layout for controllers, and you'll find that this is true for all iOS controllers. So while it is a downside, it's not something unique to this one in particular. Now, when you look at it, the quality of the controller is pretty good. The top is glossy. It does come in quite a few different colors, so you can get traditional black, blue, white, and red right here. The buttons feel really good, so they feel just like you would expect. They feel pretty much just like the 360. The sticks themselves actually feel tighter and more responsive than the ones that you find on a normal Xbox 360 controller, which is really nice. I like nice, tight, responsive sticks. And they have the same texture on the thumbsticks that you have on the Xbox controller itself. Now, if we turn it around, you'll notice that there is a clip on the back. The clip itself can be removed, so you can twist this knob and unscrew it and take the clip off, and you could use it without the clip altogether, which is great if you're gonna play with an iPad or play on Apple TV even, so it is compatible with both of those. And then the triggers and buttons that you see right here are exactly what you'd expect from an Xbox controller. They feel exactly the same. And then on the bottom, you have a spot for AA batteries. So this is not rechargeable, but honestly, that's kind of a nice thing because the AA batteries last a lot longer than rechargeable batteries do. So especially if you're gonna take this with you somewhere and play it for a while, that's a big plus. And outside of that, that's kind of it. You know, it's a really solid controller, has a little bit of texture on the bottom. You see it's got a little design on the side. And it feels really good in your hands, just like an Xbox 360 controller does. Now, docking something into it is really simple. So I'm taking an iPod Touch right here, and that's basically it. It just slides right in, clamps down smoothly, and you can see I can move it around. You know, that's not going anywhere. So it's really strong as well, and this will accommodate much larger phones. So you could put, you know, an iPhone 10 or an iPhone 8 Plus in there, no problem. But you can also go with the smaller ones. So, you know, this iPod is even smaller than an iPhone 5 or an iPhone SE, and it fits in just fine. So this is a great all-around, you know, general purpose controller. In terms of game streaming or cloud gaming, it is compatible with Moonlight and Remoter. So those are the 2 apps that are available for streaming on iOS, and it works great with both of them. So this is a great overall choice if you're looking for a good iOS controller. Up next, we have a controller from iPega called the PG9023. And this controller is really cool and it's really special. It's actually one of our absolute favorites for gaming, you know, especially mobile gaming. It's compatible with Android and PC. Now, you will notice if you go to look at the link that I have in the description for it, that the description lists it as being compatible for iOS as well. Don't buy into that. iOS has gone through 2 different versions of controller. The original version is called iCade, and the current version is called MiFi. iCade was a really old protocol that dates back to like the original iPad and iPad 2 and like the iPhone 4 and 3G. It's not something that's being used anymore, and you can't play hardly any games with it, including game streaming most importantly. So, you know, look at this as something that's not compatible with iOS. It's really just for Android and for Windows. And as a controller for those 2 things, it's awesome. So if we take a look at it, you can tell that it's designed to dock one of those devices inside. And there's quite a few buttons. So if we look on this side, you've got volume buttons right here. You've got some play and pause buttons right here. Those do control media in both Android and Windows, which is cool. I especially like the volume buttons. And then on the other side, we've got a start, home, and select button. So those are just extras there. And then when you look at the controller itself, you've got your standard A, B, X, Y buttons. You've got some pretty good joysticks up here, so they're nice and tight. They have great grip on them. And then on this side, they've got triggers and your shoulder buttons. Now these are not analog triggers, so that's one downside. They're buttons just like everything else. So they don't have that true analog feel, but they do function just fine. And what makes this controller exceptional is that you can dock pretty much any size tablet or phone into it, and it works really well. So we've tested it with an Android phone that was about 5.7 inches, and it looked really good. And I'll give you an example of how you would put something in here. So on the back, you've got a lock right here. And all you do is pull that lock out, and then you can stretch this out a little bit. The other side stretches as well, but you don't have to lock it. So this has a little bit of pressure to it. This side you can basically lock and put back in very smoothly. And we'll take a 7-inch tablet right here as an example. And all you do is dock one side over here, stretch it out, push it back together. Just make sure all the sides line up. And then you flip it over and you push in the lock. And that's it. It's locked in there really nice and tight. So this is a 7-inch Android tablet. I'm not going to talk about it specifically because it's not the greatest tablet out there. It's actually an older model, so not really appropriate for game streaming, but it's a great model, you know, in terms of showing off the controller. So you can see that a 7-inch tablet's really ideal for this. And when you hold it, I mean, it's kind of like a Wii U. You can move around, you know, you have easy access to all of the buttons, and it looks really good. Now, on top of that, you can actually put something much larger in there. So I want to show something that's pretty cool. You can actually put a Surface Pro inside of this. Now, it needs to be a Surface Pro 1 or 2 if you want to try this, because the other models got a little bit bigger and they don't fit in here anymore. So what we're going to do is go on the back real quick, unclip this so that we can basically remove this one. And I'm going to grab my Surface Pro 2 real fast. So you can see much, much larger. And so what we're basically going to do is put that on one side, push it all the way out, and wham. It's basically in there. Same thing as before, we lock it, and it holds that just fine as well. So, you know, if you wanted it to be, you know, a controller for that, and you can kind of adjust this a little bit to get it to line up just right. But if you wanted it to be a controller for your Windows tablet, that's pretty cool. You know, that makes that line up really well. And again, you know, it's a little bit bulky, but you can do, you know, very doable. I've actually played quite a bit like this. And this is a really nice game streaming setup. So, you know, a big plus for this controller. And I will throw this out there, you know, if anybody wants to try to use this as a wireless Bluetooth controller for Windows, it is doable, but you do have to add a software to the computer that's going to be using it called X360E. And I'll put a link for it in the downloads in the description. And it's just a quick program that you install, and it basically adds compatibility for this to Windows. Now, if you don't want to install anything at all and just want to use this as is for Windows, you can plug in a USB cord from your tablet to the controller. There's a spot right there in the end for micro USB. We'll see if we can capture it with the video. Yeah, there you go. You can see it. So you can plug a cord from that to the tablet that you're using, and it's basically plug and play at that point. And that can also be a nice thing in terms of game streaming, because latency really matters. And depending on the Bluetooth capabilities of your device, it might really help to have a wired connection going from the controller to your device. So that's cool. So overall, this is one of my absolute favorite Android/Windows controllers. And it's extremely flexible, and I really dig it. Up next, we have a set of Bluetooth headphones from Insignia. So these are the NS-CAHBTOE01. And you can see that on the screen, and there will be a link in the description. I know that is a long model number. Now, these headphones are absolutely awesome. So one thing off the bat that makes them great is that they're only about 20 bucks on Amazon. So that's crazy. And they're completely wireless, they're Bluetooth, they're compatible with basically everything. So they work with iPhone, they work with iPad, they work with Android, they work with Chromebook, they work with Windows, they work with Mac. So if you wanted to get just one headset that you could use for gaming on pretty much anything, something like this would be a great bet. Now, specifically with these headphones, there's not a lot to cover here. You've seen headphones before, but they're very comfortable. They've got padding for the ears, they've got padding for the top. On this side, you have some controls. So you've got play, pause, you've got fast forward, rewind, and you've also got a microphone button right here. So these do have a microphone, so they can function as a gaming headset if you want them to, and I've actually used them quite a bit for that. So if you wanted to just pick one thing that has awesome, amazing sound, and you probably won't believe that until you try them, considering that they're only $20. But if you want to get something that has really good bass, really good clarity, and that's completely wireless and that's compatible with so many things, this headset is really, really good. And you could use them with an auxiliary cable if you wanted to, so they can physically be plugged into something. They are rechargeable, so if you look right here, they've got a charging port, and there's the auxiliary port that I just talked about, and they do have a little indicator light as well for when they're charging and things like that. But I mean, these headphones are just really surprisingly good considering what they cost. And if you had to just pick one thing that you could just bring with you and use with all of your devices for game streaming, this is something that you should really consider. I mean, I've tried quite a few headsets, and in the $20 price range, especially when we're talking Bluetooth, haven't found anything that comes close to these. So definitely worth your attention. And now we have our tried and true Xbox One S controller. Now this is actually the third generation of Xbox One controller by Microsoft. So there was an original design that came out with the Xbox. There was an Xbox One Elite controller that came out next, and then they released the Xbox One S controller, which is what we're looking at today. Now the Xbox One S controller distinguishes itself by having Bluetooth support in addition to normal Xbox support. So you can use this wirelessly with most PCs, and that's awesome. So that means that you don't have to buy adapters or anything like that to use this, and that's really helpful. In addition to that, they've tweaked the analog sticks, so they have a little more grip than they used to have. They've also made the face buttons a little bit bigger, so the A, B, X, Y buttons are more pronounced and easier to reach. They've added extra grip to it. And then on top of all that, they've redone the D-pad. So one of the complaints of the original Xbox design was that the D-pad was really clicky, so it made very loud, distinct clicks, which it doesn't do anymore. And then when we switch over and look at the back side, it has excellent analog controllers, analog triggers. It's got great shoulder buttons that don't click. So that was another complaint, that the original shoulder buttons clicked a lot, so they were kind of loud and annoying. And then when we look at it head on, this is actually a rechargeable battery that I added to mine, so that's the charging port for it. This port above it can be used to add a cable to it, so you can actually use this as a wired controller if you wanted to. And overall, I mean, it's just great. The sticks feel amazing, the buttons are easy to reach, and they're just really nice. So it's really hard to beat the quality of this controller. Now, it's compatible with Windows PCs. You can use it with most Macs, and you can use it with Samsung Android phones. And I want to emphasize that it's only designed to work with Samsung Android phones. So if you have an Android phone from a different manufacturer, don't expect this to hook up and work. It probably will not. And I did test this with a Chromebook, and it did not work. I tried both wireless and wired modes. And I have read that some people had success using this on newer Chromebooks. I haven't had any success with the models that I've tested, so I wouldn't recommend buying it for that purpose. But for everything else, this is really hard to beat. It's a fantastic controller, amazing design, amazing quality. And if you had to pick just one controller to choose for most things, this would be the one to go to. Our final accessory for this video comes from Logitech. So this is the Logitech F310 wired controller. And this controller is another workhorse. So if you need something that's wired that just has amazing compatibility with pretty much any computer, this is something to really look at. So if you take a look at the layout, this looks just like a PlayStation 3 controller, which may be good or may be bad depending on your style, but it's a great physical controller, and it does have a wire on it. Now, some of you might have seen me use this recently when I made my review video of Rainway running on a Chromebook. So this is Chromebook compatible. And of all the controllers I tested, this is the only one that really consistently just worked with everything. And something that's nice is that it has a mode button right here that can be used to change between direct and X input modes. So depending on the type of game or device that you're using, the mode might need to be switched, with which none of the other controllers that we just showed off can do. So most of those other controllers only support X input, which is the modern, more compatible style of gaming. But some games, especially older titles, may want direct input, so you have a way of switching that with this controller. So it's kind of like a PlayStation controller, but with Xbox buttons. The sticks feel almost exactly like a PlayStation controller. And just as far as overall compatibility goes, this is really where it's at. So this works extremely well with Windows. It works amazingly well with Mac and with Chromebook. Even worked with Linux when I used it. So we haven't covered Linux very much in our videos because there's not a lot of streaming available for it. But if you wanted to pick one wired controller, for computers that just works really well, this is awesome. I also have used this with the NVIDIA Shield. So it does have Android compatibility as well. So if you want to hook up an adapter and play with this on Android, it works great for that. It's a great emulator controller, just a great overall controller for kind of anything you'd want to do. So like I said, it would be hard to go wrong with it, and it feels great. The button quality is great. Now, I'm not as much of a PlayStation guy myself, so I don't have as much muscle memory for this style of controller, but if you are somebody that's used the PlayStation a lot, then you'll feel really at home with this, and it definitely gets a recommendation from us. I hope that you enjoyed our video. Go ahead and head over to twitter.com/Flickstiq. Make sure that you go up and hit the follow button so that you get notified every time that we do something new. On top of that, we have a brand new website over at flickstiq.com, and if you go there, you'll notice that we cover a lot of things that aren't in our videos. So we cover things like game streaming news and reviews of game streaming products and cloud gaming information. So it's basically a great destination for everything that you could possibly want to know about game streaming and cloud gaming. So visit flickstiq.com and be sure to subscribe once you get there. And lastly, you absolutely do want to head over to youtube.com/Flickstiq and make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you get notified every time we release a new video, and so that you can stay on top of game streaming and cloud gaming. And until next time, you guys have a good one.